So this is an interesting one. Your employer may be held liable if you're injured working from home. So Phumla Motsa, who is an independent consulting occupational therapist at Workforce Healthcare, says using home office spaces that are not correctly set up may lead to musculoskeletal disorders and repetitive strain injuries. So these injuries lead to time off work and may also lead to pain issues. Very interesting. Phumla Motsa joins us now. Quite interesting, says Phumla. Thanks indeed for your time. So I think I heard about this about a week ago from our executive producer, Blaine Herman, and I was quite startled by how does my employer, take the rap for me being injured at home, whereas in instances where we come from the period of COVID-19, those are some of the measures that needed to be put in place. But it is quite strenuous and quite uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So the thing is that if we presume that employees working from home will be, in most instances, working in the scope and in the requirement of what the employer wants them to do, then that workstation can be looked at as a workspace according to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So as we are moving now into hybrid, and some employers are looking at this as an option for the employees, we really want to ask the question in terms of what home offices look like, because we know that some people are working maybe on their beds, maybe on the kitchen table, maybe propped up with the sofa behind. And if you are in a non-neutral or awkward position, this can lead to musculoskeletal disorders or repetitive strain injuries.
Okay, so I'm always working on my bed and with my computer, so with my laptop. And do you think, people are aware of these rights? Because obviously this would be a mutual agreement between the employer and the employee. If you have, for example, an escalation in the number of COVID-19 cases, some employees who would opt to work at home. Are they aware of these rights? And, do employees then see also the risk of allowing this to happen on the basis that, some of these employees would develop some of these pains that you speak about?
So I think, if we go back to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, we're really looking at training being what an employer can do for an employee. And because the Act gives the onus on both the employer and the employee. So the employer is there to train, the employee is there to then put into practice what has been indicated. So when we're talking ergonomics, often employers will worry about perhaps the cost implications. But what we're actually looking at is neutral position. So neutral at the shoulder, neutral at the elbow as I am working. And if you also imagine walking into an office, it's always decked up with like monitors, chairs, and height adjustable things. But when we all moved home, that was not there, and we had to make do with what was available because of COVID and because of what we found ourselves in. But unfortunately, national and international research tells us that using unergonomic equipment can lead to these musculoskeletal disorders, which is basically inflammation in your joints. And as a clinician, so from a clinical side, we are seeing a rise in back pain and in neck pain and in wrist pain, which from a root cause, we can lead, or we can infer that it is potentially due to how people are sitting and working. Because if you do sit and work in an awkward position, your likelihood of increasing the risk is there, and we can't ignore that. Absolutely.
So how can employees go about then claiming for injury on duty when working from home?
Well, the gaming side, I'm not sure, because we read it from an educational point of view. So at Workforce Healthcare, we are advocating for training. So, getting your employees the knowledge of how. And often, Criselda, we can actually use what's available in the home. So in a 45-minute session, we can take you through, look at this, position this, do this. And in that time, you can set up the engineering part of it. But there's also other things like taking regular breaks, like doing stretch rises in between. So part of that is just looking at the holistic and well-being of employees. And often employers don't even know where we're sitting and where we're working. And so really we're looking at how we can help employees. And we have it both sides, the employer and the employee.
Yeah.
So from an employee side, to just equip yourself with the knowledge of how to set up your workstation. And we have so many resources available for employees to be able to do that for themselves.
You touched on this a bit. I mean, there's obviously cost implications as well, because if I'm sitting in the lounge area trying to find a conducive space to Zoom or to Skype or to get an interview done, you're obviously going to have to buy certain things to make the environment a bit more conducive for you to work. Do you think that, employees or employers, I beg your pardon, should be taking some of these things into account?
Well, I think what we've seen is that your bigger employers have allowed employees to take some of their equipment home to be able to set up. Perhaps smaller employers wouldn't be able to do that. But as an occupational therapist, we really look at what is available, because I can lift your laptop stand with a book or with a box, and we can see what's in your home environment. And the other beauty, Griselda, of this is that because if you're working from home, you can actually set up your workstation for yourself and your productivity. So it's actually quite a win-win situation if the employer allows you to look at your environment, because even from a sensory profiling point of view, you can actually do your best work if you are set up optimally, but it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg.
Absolutely, and quite frankly, we enjoyed working from home. I remember this all too well, having to set up studios at the height of COVID-19 inside our homes and all of that. Phumla, thank you so much indeed for your time. Very interesting. Phumla Motsa talking to us about how employers may be liable if you're injured working from home. Thanks a lot for joining us here on The Agenda.